Today's talk will be called Moving Forward or Navigating a Social Life with TBI, with funny years around it. It's sponsored by the Arizona Governor's Council on Spinal and Head Injuries. And I am Austin, or Dr. Austin Duncan, at the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities at the University of Arizona. We will be joined today by a panel of three different survivors: Calvin Cook, Mateo Treetop, and Michele Kauffman. But before we do that, I need to give us a little background on the subject of today's talk to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So what we will be talking about today is what I call TBI Sociality, which is essentially all the different kinds of social interactions and relationships that TBI survivors or traumatic brain injury survivors have in the years after their injuries. This is a very poorly understood part of the TBI experience that is extremely important to survivors' lives and the outcomes from their injuries. Therefore, I think we need to pay a lot more attention to it. And we'll be talking about this today and in the next week when we do the Q&A and the more technical assistance. Today's talk, I'll just be going over briefly what I could call the social life of TBI, which is the subject of my NSF-sponsored PhD dissertation here at the University of Arizona a couple of years ago. Then I will go over just a little bit more about TBI because, frankly, even those who understand about TBI don't always know everything there is to know, or even most of what there is to know. And I'm going to be approaching TBI from a different angle than you may have heard about before. Therefore, it's going to be important that we're all on the same page. Then I will present the main subject of today, which is TBI sociality, which I call the difference that makes the difference in and between survivors' lives. Then we'll have, for the majority of our time today, the survivor sociality panel featuring our three panelists, and then we'll have a Q&A, at which time all of you can ask all of them questions. And hopefully you will develop some questions of your own that you can keep in mind for when we have the Q&A and the technical assistance session next week at the same time on the same day. So getting started, I myself, as you know, am a TBI survivor. I sustained a very severe traumatic brain injury in 2003. There's a picture of me on the slideshow with my dad in one of my last days in the hospital before I was released. Couple technical details for those who are interested. I was spontaneously unconscious for 6 days. I had a Glasgow coma scale of 4 and a post-traumatic amnesia of about 1.5 months. In other words, it was quite severe. Flash forward to today. This was from last year when I graduated with my PhD from the University of Arizona with my two parents standing by my side, just as my dad was standing supporting me in the first picture and my mom was taking the camera. This experience is largely what drove me to explore what I call the social life of TBI, which was the name of my NSF-sponsored dissertation in medical anthropology, which I conducted with a group of TBI survivors years after they completed biomedical rehabilitation in the city of Seattle, where I myself completed my own rehabilitation. This was a distinctly social, it's medical anthropology, but it's distinctly social scientific, meaning it's approaching medical issues from a social angle. Specifically, I was looking at many years after biomedical rehabilitation has had its way, has come and helped survivors as much as they can be helped, or at least within reason to what they can be helped for, and then explores how survivors are getting by, how they're moving forward with their lives over the later years. So this was actually quite novel in terms of social scientific research on traumatic brain injury. Most of it looks at clinical interactions or even biological repercussions of traumatic brain injuries. They largely ignore what TBI looks like for survivors and those around them in the years after they leave rehab. And as I found, this is really the crux of the matter, because life with TBI, and again, that's in bunny ears, and I'll explain why in a minute. Life with TBI is distinct from TBI, the injury. Yes, of course, they are related, But that does not mean that you can tell what a life with TBI will look like, given what happens with the actual brain injury itself. And what I found was that you can't make sense of survivors or their lives or their conditions outside of their physical and social context. That's like the environment they're in, places, essentially everything that has to do with their life that is not directly tied to the injury. And so what I determined was that what helps survivors as they move forward with their lives from the injury isn't rehabilitation. Rather, it's not just rehabilitation. Yes, rehabilitation makes a very large difference, but it is not the only difference. And in some cases, not even the most important difference. So essentially, I'm not denigrating medical science, scientific approaches to traumatic brain injury. It is a medical injury issue. It is a physical injury. That the medical side of it is very important, but it's not all of the picture. And it's often not the picture that leads survivors to essentially the quality of their lives and even the length of their lives or years after. So what it really means is that if you've seen one TBI, a TBI that starts as a medical crisis, simply put, a head injury, you hit your head on something or something hits you on the head. There were 42,765 emergency visits related to head injuries in Arizona in 2020 alone. Now, remember, in 2020, what happened? The pandemic happened. So people were not living their normal lives then. That number, 42,765, is likely far smaller than it would have been had there not been the pandemic. Also, many people were not as willing to go out in public or to do things like being treated at hospitals. So if they suffered a traumatic brain injury, a mild traumatic brain injury where they were not unconscious, they were not as likely to actually go to emergency rooms. So the number is very small. We do know from the CDC before the pandemic happened that there are over 2 million of these injuries in the US alone every single year. It's extremely common. Traumatic brain injuries can happen from falls, which is the most significant of the reasons for it, auto or other accidents. This used to be the most significant cause of traumatic brain injuries, physical violence, and many other reasons. Basically, anything that results in you hitting your head can cause a traumatic brain injury. It is a top cause of death and disability for those under 65 in the United States. In other words, this is a very, very, very common condition that most of us don't speak about. And so we don't really know that it's a large part of American life. There are, of course, 3 different diagnoses: mild, moderate, and severe. Mild, what is normally known as concussion, often does not result in long-lasting consequences or loss of consciousness, but moderate and severe injuries do. And the sequelae, which is what we call the consequences of these injuries, because traumatic brain injury or TBI is not a disease, so it does not have symptoms, but it does have consequences. So we call these sequelae, are physical, including things like muscular control, sensory issues, balance, physical coordination, and the like. Cognitive issues, memory, executive function, which is a problem with arranging tasks in time in order to complete them. Reasoning, other general reasoning abilities. You can also have emotional problems, things like emotional regulation, impulsivity, depression, anxiety, and the like, etc., etc., etc. If the brain has some role in a bodily function or capacity, it can potentially be affected by a traumatic brain injury. It can become a sequelae of a TBI. And if you've seen one TBI, you have seen one TBI. And I would add, at one point in time. So the sequelae differ by survivor. There is no universal sequelae. Yes, unconsciousness from moderate to severe, it's pretty universal. That's in the definition of the injury. But there aren't any actual universal sequelae that all survivors experience. Adding a new layer of complexity. The sequelae aren't permanent. They can improve. They can regress throughout survivors' life. They can appear where they didn't exist before. Doesn't mean that survivors didn't notice it before, although that also can be true. But it can be that they just appeared. They did not exist before. Adding more complexity to this. Sequelae and the experience of sequelae change throughout the day. In other words, for most ordinary individuals, they've experienced, having more memory problems, more problems concentrating, things like that when they first wake up or when they're inebriated or something like that. And that can change as the effects of alcohol go away or you wake up more. Well, guess what? For survivors, it's the same thing. Their sequelae and their experiences of them change throughout the day, which means that the context they're in matters. Things like environmental issues, so climate, the physical accommodations that they're able to receive, sensory problems. So a lot of survivors get overloaded by overstimulation from their senses, causing significant problems. That's all one part of the context. Another part, the key part for my research, is social, meaning their social interactions, the social support or accommodations that survivors receive, the tolerance or misunderstanding they can receive from others. All of this can affect survivors' sequelae and their experience of their sequelae. So the take home from my research, which shouldn't be that surprising for anyone who's worked with or knows TBI survivors, is survivors don't necessarily have anything in common. It's not a requirement that we share something other than the fact that we hit our heads at some point in time. So why are we talking about them as one category? I mean, it's a medical issue, but once survivors leave the hospital, they don't have to share anything. Why am I talking about them in one way? Because what we call living with TBI, in other words, what life is like after TBI, is something that we largely share. It doesn't mean that we share the same life, but we have the same experience, which is the sense that our lives with TBI, remember, TBI is an injury, not an illness, so we don't live with the injury, we live with the consequences of the injury. But those consequences and the way those are received by society is something that we largely share. And this is the actual disability that survivors with TBI face. More importantly, adding another layer of complexity onto this, those around survivors, especially our families, also live with TBI. This is not just something that one person deals with alone. Multiple groups of people, or multiple individuals in a group of people deal with these situations, with this injury at the same time, not in the same way, but it still is something that we all need to live with. So if TBI, the injury, is individual, TBI, the disability, or living with TBI, is something that is decidedly social. And those social contexts that I was just talking about largely shape survivors' lives with TBI. And the disability is largely defined by and determined by those around us, by those other people who also live with TBI. They constitute what TBI as a disability comes to mean. So as I said, the sequelae always interact with the context. And this can often lead to misunderstandings, which, when others don't understand TBI survivors' interactions with others and the world, can lead to stigma. Seeing TBI survivors as defective or weird or inconsiderate. All of these stigmatizations then interact with the other factors in survivors' lives, what social scientists call intersectionalities, things like race, gender, sexuality, class, etc. All of these things that are other causes of inequalities and mistreatment, which can then drive survivors into social isolation. Poverty, we have very high rates of poverty among TBI survivors. Homelessness, TBI survivors make up, and I'm not making this up, this is pretty universal in the literature, make up around 50% of homeless populations in cities where it has been studied. and even suicide. Suicide is a top cause of death for TBI survivors. In other words, all of this flows directly from the social interactions or misinteractions that we have. But there is one ray of hope, which is that others, because they are the difference that makes the difference in our lives, can make it better. And these are not just any others, but those that I call significant others, following sociologist Erving Kauffman. People who are not necessarily romantic partners, but family members, roommates or neighbors, friends, anyone who is there in the right time, in the right ways, or in the wrong ways to make the difference in our lives. These SOs can help or hinder survivors as we move forward with TBI. They help us in our social lives. They stand in for us when we get upset or when we misremember things, when we make mistakes in our reasoning or our speech, which also can be support in our work and our larger life goals. Things that we do for employment are in always social, our social interactions with others in these situations can lead to our longer term life outcomes. So the question that I'm really arriving at with this long introduction to this two-part webinar series is, what can you do to help survivors that are in your lives or that you meet on the street? And we will give you several of these strategies. But first, I would like to give survivors themselves a chance to show you how all of these things that I just went over appear in their lives, because it's one thing to talk about a social reality in a lecture format like this, but it's another thing to see it in the world. And in order to understand what I'm talking about and why it is very important, you would need to be able to see it in other people's lives, lives of other survivors who are not just me. Okay? And we will be talking about that with our panel when we come back after a short break of 5 minutes. Okay, everyone, welcome back. It's currently 1:30, and we're going to get to the heart of this first webinar, which I hope is the thing that everyone has been looking forward to, which is a panel of 3 specific traumatic brain injury survivors, Mateo Treetop, Calvin Cook, and Michele Kauffman, who are essentially going to sit down with me in a virtual format and discuss TBI sociality and the difference that it makes in all of our lives. I'm going to stop the share for a moment so that our technical support can put us all in front of you. So to get us started, I would like to give each of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves to you, to explain about themselves, their injury, and essentially the roles that social relations have played in their lives. So I would like to start, if I could, with my good friend Michele Kauffman from Seattle. Michele, could you just introduce yourself and explain to us about TBI in your life, please?
I sure can. Thanks for having us all, Austin, and thanks everybody for coming today. My name is Michele Kauffman. I live in SeaTac, Washington, right outside Seattle, right next to the airport, with my husband, Tom, of 30 years, and my service dog, Hallelujah. He's 135 pounds of kisses, half Newfoundland and half standard poodle. He's a gift. He allows me to get out into the world and do what I need to do to make me whole. I fell down my basement stairs September 10th of 2010. I hit all 4 lobes of my head down the stairs. The house is 100 years old, so the whole floors are petrified. I landed on the bottom, fracturing C3 and 4 in my neck and rupturing in vertebrae in a blood vessel in my head, which moved my brain 8 millimeters, almost off the stem. So my son found me. He wasn't supposed to. Another gift. He was outside in the backyard. No reason to look down the basement stairs. They rushed me to Harborview. where they removed a third of my skull, which I really fondly call my Harborview hairdo. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I proudly wear my hair up, and I really like to show it off to cars who don't stop in the crosswalk. So 7 surgeries ensued, 2 years without hair, all the therapies, 13 medications. I came home on 270 milligrams of morphine a day and 58 Oxycontin for breakthrough pain. I didn't know I had a head injury. I knew I couldn't get out of bed. I knew I couldn't shower by myself. I knew absolutely nothing. At the top of my basement stairs, I was forensic accountant at the United States Attorney's Office. At the bottom of those stairs, I couldn't add 8 and 3 without taking my shoes off. My life had changed so drastically. I thought the big problem was going to be I didn't have any hair for 2 years. Sorry, Austin. It wasn't a problem. I really thought that other people's idea of me was because my hair was beautiful. That's how I thought at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the amount of my self-esteem. Let me tell you how my life changed. Couldn't read for 4 years, couldn't take care of myself. My head was open, so Harborview wouldn't keep me. They sent me home after each one of these 7 surgeries the next day. And my husband and my 16-year-old did all my wound care, did all my home care, and helped me get where I needed to go. I had no assistance. I had a mother-in-law who really wished I wouldn't have made it at the bottom of those stairs. I'd taken care of her for 10 years and did for the next 10 as a survivor. So 4 years later, the reading came back and I got off most of the medication except for the pain medication. And we were on our way. I spoke that year at the Washington Brain Injury Conference and the Oregon Traumatic Brain Injury State Conference. Me and my partner, Joel LeGuatin, in the brain injury world. I thought my life was going to get as back to normal as it would. We were going on vacation on June 13th, 2014, 4 years later, in our family vehicle with the son who found me at the bottom of the stairs, my loving husband, and 3 of my son's friends, 6 seatbelts. The young lady was texting on the freeway. And she drove her boyfriend's daddy's Dodge Neon underneath my F-150 to her windshield wipers, and she walked away with her little pink phone. I didn't. I got a second brain injury, worse than the first. It was a closed head injury. There were no surgeries. I looked just the same, but I lost my whole autonomic system. I lost myself again. I lost my identity. I lost my reason for being. I was back in all the therapies and all 13 of those medications again, starting all over after I thought I had beat this beast. And once again, I have recovered, and I am off all those medications for 3 years by holistic living, by trying to do everything everybody told me, and by finding people who supported me. I can't wait to tell you about my significant other. My husband and my son, 2 sons, are my mainstay in my life. But I wouldn't have made it through the recovery of my brain injury without my significant other. So today I lead brain injury support groups trying to give back. I'm over $1 million in parts and labor at Harborview. I run in-person support groups once a week with my buddy for years. And then COVID came, we went home. So now we do 20 hours of Zoom, and we write a weekly newsletter, and we try and help other people who are coming along. We especially love the new guy. We love the old guy who's been doing this for 40 years and still doesn't get it, because it doesn't go away. That's what they didn't tell us. And so I hope you get information today that can help you. And if there's anything that we can do in your future, let us know. Thank you, Austin.
Thanks very much, Michele. Calvin, would you mind unmuting yourself and sharing a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yes, thank you, Austin, for having me and us, and thank you to the audience. My name is Calvin Cook. I have a traumatic brain injury and a spinal cord injury. I use a wheelchair for mobility. I was in a motorcycle versus pedestrian accident. At age 6, I was crossing the street with my babysitter and her 4 kids and my younger brother. And I was hit by a motorcycle. This happened in Palm Springs, California. I was air vac to Loma Linda Hospital, so I'm very grateful for that hospital. I was in a coma for 6 weeks, and then I woke up, and then I went through the therapy. I had a G tube. I have a shunt in my head. For those who don't know, that is a tube in my brain that helps to drain excess fluids. Um, so I was in Loma Linda. Um, one, sorry. One moment, please. Maybe Mateo can go, and I will continue. Never mind, Austin. I'm sorry for that. Um, that technical difficulty. I apologize. So I was in Loma Linda, and then we moved from Loma Linda to San Bernardino. That was in like 2003. So we were still in California, and then I moved back to Phoenix, Arizona. I'm originally from Phoenix. My accident happened in Palm Springs. Um, so that's a bit of my history. But we moved back to Phoenix in 2004 for family. Um, and I've never, I had not really been familiar with the disability community. I knew some individuals from therapy who had disabilities, some friends, but um, I was not really active in the disability community until 2008, and then I found out about Ability 360, and I started going to some of their support groups, and then um, I I went through this workforce program here in Phoenix, and I met a lady who offered me an opportunity at a nonprofit called Southwest Institute for Families and Children, and they were sponsoring a self-advocacy group called the Youth Action Council at the time. And I started going to that group in 2010. And then from there, I just started getting more involved in the disability community, learning that I wasn't the only one um, with learning that I wasn't the only one going through some of the struggles that I thought were only happening to me. So since 2010, I've been more involved in the disability community. Now the president um, of what was the Youth Action Council, now we go by the Inclusive Empowerment Network. So I'm the president of that group. I'm also an outreach coordinator for People First of Arizona, which is another self-advocacy group. And I work part-time for Diverse Ability Incorporated. Um, we do a lot of work with youth who have disabilities. I've been with them since 2020 of August. And then I like to offer my time in other disability related activities such as this here. And I'm also an ASU student. I'm going for my degree in social work. And I think I wanted to share more, but probably slipped my mind. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. I do want to also share that I'm an artist. I make music. So if you care to hear that, then you can put it in the chat and I will share.
Thank you very much, Calvin. We really appreciate it. And our last panelist, Mateo, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your life?
Yes, my name is Mateo Treetop. I am Hunkpapa Lakota. I have, my mom is Tana Treetop. She is Hunkpapa Lakota. And I have relatives in Fort Berthold, North Dakota, in the Arikara, Mandan, and Hidatsa three United Tribes nation. The reason why I say this is because this is a cultural way of introducing oneself, and it is to show respect for who you are and where you come from, and honoring the people that have come before you. And I am a actually recent college graduate with 2 degrees in visual communication and in regards to graphic design, and another degree in theatrical arts. I I have lived in Arizona for 20 years now, and I let's see, and anything else I'm supposed to say at this point? I'm blanking a bit.
It's totally all right, Mateo. Just tell us a little about yourself, people who are in your lives, and what's it been like for you living and going to college with TBI.
Okay, thank you. So, I do have a traumatic brain injury that was caused by shaken baby syndrome. I do have another instance of TBI as well that was caused by being dropped on my head. So I technically have 2. But going through school, I have very much succeeded in the public education, in public education with graduating high school and graduating with 10 years of perfect attendance. In college, it was it was a different experience. It was a bit more challenging. The the more free form nature of college, it was nice. It was good, but I was used to the structured nature of public school, so that was a transition, and I may not have always done my best because of that transition, but I've made it to graduation, which is which I think is a good accomplishment. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Mateo. We really appreciate it. All right, now I've got a couple of questions that I would like to bring up for each of our panelists to discuss and talk to each other about. Please, everyone, if you have questions, keep them until about 20 minutes, 30 minutes from now. We're going to be basically opening the floor up to everyone from the audience to ask our panelists or myself questions. And of course, technical questions that are related to what I talked about just before the panel came on, please save those for next week, if you will. So the very first thing I want to do is ask all of our panelists who the significant others, those people that have helped all of you, especially in dealing with your TBIs. Who are the significant others that have helped you over the years since your injuries, and how did they help you? And any of you can answer, but it looks like Michele is ready. So Michele, why don't you start us off?
I'd love to. Well, as I said, the husband of 30 years and the 2 adult children have really been a mainstay for me in what I used to think was self-care, making sure I got my teeth brushed and my bandages changed and I got a shower every day with the neck brace with the 2 broken vertebrae. That was really difficult. They really had to do a lot of work for me physically, and they helped me mentally. They're my family. It's what they're supposed to do. But they were my caretakers. And so for them to step into that role of all the time, they don't want to do it. They don't come to they support me all the way, but they're not part of my brain injury recovery as I've led these meetings all these years. They're in the background cheering me on. And then my other significant other I had on the negative side, the mother-in-law that really wished I wouldn't have lived at the bottom of the stairs, even though I was her caretaker. She has been an ominous threat over the past decade. At one point, actually had to move out of the family home and leave my husband there to take care of her instead of me, and move in with friends for 6 months because she kept telling me she really wished I wouldn't have made it. So we have all sorts of significant others, some that do for us and some that do against us. Behind me are my favorite significant others. This is from the Walk, Run, or Roll at Green Lake in Seattle on April 30th this year, the BIAWA put on. These are my people. This is who I run to every day. But I want you to look in the picture. I'm down with my dog Hallelujah in the front row in the red jacket. Next to me with his hand on my shoulder is my significant other. His name is Joel LaGuatin. We met at a Harborview support group. I had gone maybe 2 months, and it was Joel's first meeting. And we locked eyes when he came in the room. He was late. And he sat down, and then he got up and moved over by me and sat next to my side. And we haven't parted sides since, and that was 10 years ago. Joel understood me. I understood Joel. He had 2 sisters and family in his life. I was really struggling to get out there. I had no memory. I had no sense of direction. I had a great sense of humor. What I lost in intelligence, I got in compassion and sense of humor. That did not help me when I was lost on 24th and Market trying to get to my physical therapy appointment. So Joel would sit with me every night, and we would go through our steps for the next day and where I was supposed to be and what he was supposed to do. Unfortunately, he had a smarter phone. He wasn't on narcotics, which really was another problem. Another whole issue in my recovery was like having a bucket on my head for 3 years and then for another 3 years. But he helped me with everything I needed. He understood when I said I lost my keys. He knew I could find them in the freezer. He just knew it. Everything I needed, Joel had. He'd cry with me. He led these support groups with me. We started taking over one after another, and we helped other people. And every day when we had problems, we'd talk together, but we'd talk about what we could do to help somebody else the next day. And so my relationship with my significant other is so important to me. I've got lots of friends in this community. We have a base of 200 in TBI groups that we lead together. But there's nobody in my life like Joel, and there will never be, because he had me. He basically caught me at the bottom of those stairs, and he's had me ever since, and he'll hold me forever. And that's can be a significant. People mistake us for being an old married couple because we finish each other's sentences. We talk over each other at the same time. We rub up and sit next to each other. And if you know us both, you know how far-fetched that is. But we don't mind because we're like brother and sister, and we're all family in this picture. But he's my main guy, my significant other. I'm so proud to say is Joel LaGuatin. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Calvin and Mateo, if either of you would like to speak about significant others who have been in your lives after your injuries.
for me, it's been initially my mom, my younger brother, who is 18 months younger than me. I have spent most of my time growing up with them. I moved from Phoenix to Palm Springs with them initially. And then after my accident, my biological father, he was around periodically for a good amount of time. So he was there for me, and then when we moved back to Phoenix, Arizona in 2004, I moved back here with my mom and my brother. I'm not really close to much of my biological family, but after moving out here, we have been blessed with what I like to call bonus family. So I have a lot of bonus brothers and sisters, and along with them, a lot of nieces and nephews. It's like 16. So they're there for me a lot. But as Michele mentioned, that's my family, and they try to support me as best as they can. But ever since 2008, when I got involved with the disability community, I was recognizing that I was able to receive that sense of comfort and support that I wasn't able to find elsewhere. And as I mentioned, I'm involved with a few different pockets in the disability community. And I'm just being connected with somebody else who has a disability. Despite what it is, it just gives me a sense of comfort and hope, and I feel encouraged seeing others surviving with what others may perceive as a disadvantage. I know a lot of great individuals in the disability community who are doing awesome things, and even being here today, I'm inspired and encouraged just hearing from these individuals here today. So I feel like the disability community is my significant other. Um,
Thank you very much, Calvin. That was great. Mateo, who were these significant others, people who have helped you in dealing with your traumatic brain injuries, that have helped you in the years after your injury, and how did they help you?
So the first person would be my mom. After my I believe first traumatic brain injury, she was in the hospital medical library looking up what traumatic brain injury is, and trying to figure out ways in which to help me, and just trying to understand the effects of traumatic brain injury. But she has also helped me throughout the years of since then, um, just giving me helpful reminders and just being there. Um, but let's see. There are there are other people. I am a part of the Arizona Youth Leadership Forum. That is a forum for young adults and youth who have disabilities that help them transition into adulthood. I am a 2015 graduate of that program, and that has helped me a lot. And because that helped me with my self-advocacy skills, that has helped me with a lot of I learn a lot of different ways to be productive and active within my own community, as a person with a disability. Let's see. I think for the most part, those are the two big influences in my life in regards to significant others that have helped me along the way.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to fill in from my perspective. Receiving a PhD is not an easy task, psychologically very difficult, very destructive. I was in a really bad spot in 2015 and 2016, and I had to take medical leave. And there were a couple things that really helped me and in many ways saved my life then. First off, there was a psychologist that I met once here in Tucson, Arizona, who took one look at me, talked to me, said, "You need to go on medical leave. You need to stop what you're doing right now." But then I was able to go back home and stay at my parents for 6 months and recover. It was amazing how easy it was to get back to a good position as soon as I was out of this current social environment. And then also my advisor at the time, Susan Shaw, helped me by giving me all sorts of accommodations in finishing my graduate exams that you have to take at the end of your coursework, and then progressing on and submitting my dissertation application, which is essentially what I presented to you all today. So without those people, I would not have been able to get where I'm at now, just like for Calvin and Michele and Mateo. Without these other people's aid, regardless of my impairments, or in some ways in cooperation with my impairments, is what allowed me to get to where I am today. So that's what helped us get to where we are. Now, I would like to know from each of you, how do you continue to get help from others, especially significant others today? How do you cultivate new ones if you need to? And anyone can answer the first couple of questions.
I would say for me, it's been helpful just putting myself out there. I'm also a graduate of Arizona Youth Leadership Forum. I graduated in 2019. And I graduated, it was my very last opportunity to go through that program. I think maybe it took me so long because aside from living a life, I felt like I was nervous. I felt like I was fearful. And I've recognized in other areas of my life, once I overcame that fear, and I decided to put myself out there and do some of the things that that I wanted to do, despite being fearful. I recognized that that's when opportunity was starting to be available to me, and with opportunities, I have been able to I have been able to cultivate relationships with individuals that have been beneficial for my well-being overall. And knowing that, that drives me to want to put myself out there more, because it is very beneficial for my well-being, from for my emotional state, my mental state, and my physical state. It gives me energy to be around these certain individuals, and yeah, it's exciting overall. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Mateo, do you have anything to add here?
Yes. Um, so, so, how it, let's see. So how my significant others have helped, continually helped me, is that, you know, I mean, I mean, really, it's about communication. Communicating what I need and seeing if they, if they have the answers. I mean, right now, I'm gonna pull back the curtains a little bit. Right now I'm getting text messages from my mom, who is also on the webinar. She's giving me, remember to mention this and this. That's incredibly, that is incredibly helpful. And that's incredibly, good. That today, she's still, giving me, helpful, feedback, and making sure I do mention, certain things, because she has seen, what I've, um, the challenges that I've been through. As for how do I cultivate new significant others if I need it? I mean, honestly, I think it's, at least for me, seeing who, the right person is. We might, we might get lucky, and we might find somebody that we instantly click with. Or we might find somebody that, we kind of have to, dig a little bit deeper, that might be a little bit more, closed off or guarded. But I think, just trying to find people that we resonate with and that have that special connection, that we have that special connection with, and who do understand us. That would be, my answer to that.
Thanks very much to all three of you. And as a final question, before we open it up to the audience to ask all of us questions, what do you all think, the three of you, that others, such as survivors, their friends, family, people who work with survivors, policymakers, or just the general public, what do you think others should know about TBI and social relationships and the importance of social relationships in your lives with TBI?
I think one of the really, really important things for people to understand is what's left after what we've lost. When you've lost your career, when you've lost your identity, you've lost your dreams, your goals, you're not even really sure if your name is still Michele. And what we have left are our feelings. And they so often forget that it's not what they can do for us, but how they treat us makes all the difference in the world. For example, had I not made it, I would have rather have the kindest, most generous, heart-breathing physician next to me than the best doctor in the world who didn't care and left me in 5 minutes because they needed to see the next patient. It doesn't matter sometimes what you can do. It's just if you're heard. Being heard is the biggest thing a brain injury survivor, the biggest gift they can get. To be brought to the table, be part of the conversation, to be spoken to be listened to, and to have some follow through afterwards is, I think, all that I try and ask from people that I come into communication with. Because more often than not, I'm dismissed, blown off. I have no letters behind my name. As you see, I'm the community activist. But you know what? When I show up with my 200 other community activists, suddenly I get somebody's ear. And suddenly we make progress. So that's where we're going to go forward. Me and my significant other, we're going to gather every survivor in all of America to get some of these rules, laws, and other things changed so they know this is a progressive, debilitating disease that needs further research, and they need to understand our lived experiences, what it's really like to get up in this body and in this mind and be able to have a nice conversation in a group like this 3 days a month, and 3 other days a month, put my laundry in the oven. And until you actually get to be with us and see us and understand how we work, then you just don't get it. So we're going to sing the song loud and clear and make sure everybody understands, to speak to us in a manner that we can understand and hear what we say back to them and really listen. That's what's up.
Thanks, Michele. Mateo or Calvin, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes. So, I mean, I think, giving, person, a chance to, be heard is important. But, also, when we do speak up and when we do, do talk, because some of us are not always, the first to talk or, have the loudest voice, it is important to, not cut us off or to interrupt us, because that does so for some of us that is we have some processing issues, and it's if we are if we get cut off or interrupted, we won't get back to some of us might not get back to the same idea or the thoughts that we had, or it might take us a lot longer to get back to what we were just talking about. And if you know I think let's see, I think that in in the more political, not political, okay, just in a more public space, you know we look like anybody else, and I think just giving that those types of that type of courtesy and consideration, not only to us but other people, will help in a longer in the long run, because our disability, our lives, we are for some of us, we are our disability is hidden. It's not as noticeable. So I think that's all that I wanted to share.
Thanks a lot, Mateo. Calvin, would you like to finish this off?
Yes, I want to say that I think that, and I was trying to figure out how to say this, but I would say that it being understood and believed that we are still regular people, and our feelings do matter. I feel like that's important. That's important in order for those same individuals to provide us with encouragement. I do want to say I'm grateful for my mom. Before 2008, I remember that she had taken me to it was some kind of conference, but that was really the first that was the first group of individuals with disabilities that I had like really interacted with. And I felt like that planted a seed for when 2 years later, I had an opportunity to visit Ability 360. I was ready for that. And I believe that my mom believed in me enough. She believed that that I was person enough and that my feelings mattered enough um, to encourage me to go to that conference. And then again, 2 years later, she encouraged me to visit Ability 360. So I felt like that would be helpful for individuals to recognize if you have somebody in your life that has a disability, whether it be TBI or whatever, they're still a regular person and their feelings matter and they should be, um, they should and they need encouragement in order to progress as a human being.
Thank you very much, Calvin, and all of us, all of you, for that wonderful little discussion. What I'd like to do with the last 15 minutes is open up to the audience for questions that you might have for Calvin, Michele, and Mateo, or me, but primarily the three panelists about their lives with TBI or the comments that they've shared with all of us. Please type your questions in the chat. If you would like to ask your question verbally, you can click the reaction button and raise hand, and we will unmute you for that. But please try and, if you would, type it in the chat first, and then we will try and answer your questions. Thanks so much, everyone. Please ask away.
We got a question from Margarita for Mateo. Are you working on design at present time?
Right now, no. I I'm actually right now I'm working with the Arizona Youth Leadership Forum among the summer sessions, and that's been taking up most of my time. We do get a week between each session, but this week I actually went to Denver and I just got back last night. So not at the present, no.
Question from Treetop. To all panelists, what personal practices help you manage TBI in your daily lives?
Heart breathing. It's what I do. I put my hand over my heart, and every breath I take in, I breathe in patience. And with every breath I let out, I breathe out whatever the frustration, the intolerance, the judgment, whatever I'm feeling at the moment, 3 times, and I move on.
For me, for me, my daily devotion is big. I pray or meditate, however you want to see it. I pray and I read my Bible. So study. I enjoy other. I enjoy self-improvement. So whether that be reading or I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I am in financial services right now. So I have a group that I meet up with throughout the week. Whether it be in person or via Zoom. I have a church group that I meet with. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the disability community and the activities I do for and with the disability community is very helpful, whether it be with my work or volunteering activities. And then, as I mentioned, I make music. So whenever I can express myself that way, that's like a form of therapy for me. And I'm creating and expressing myself that way. And then I was thinking there was something else, but yeah, I think that I also I write poetry. So that's helpful. Like during my devotion, I might write like a testimonial piece. So that's helpful. Yeah. Um, yeah, so a slew of things is very helpful for me.
I would say what helps me, the practices that help me are really just really just just taking time and trying to think about it, as well as uh you know I think doing something else, and um giving whatever is challenging me some time, because sometimes it might just clear up, as Austin stated, in his presentation. Sometimes they just come, different challenges just come and go. So I think that that would be my answer.
Thanks, Mateo. My answer, I'll just do this really quickly. Patience and tolerance with other people, because I know that it's hard to understand me sometimes. I want understanding and tolerance from them. So I try to give them what I expect to get for myself. And, sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And I give myself the patience and tolerance to feel bad, to get upset, to realize that I do live a life with TBI, and I think we all do. And I need to be patient with myself, just like I'm trying to be patient with other people. I wanted to talk real quick. I saw a bunch of questions coming in about services here at the U of A. They are very hit and miss. I actually haven't had the best of luck with them. I happened to find a advisor who was wonderful. That really helped me. It took a while to get to her. Like I said, I was really not doing well at the U of A until I found the right advisor. So there aren't a lot of universal supports because TBI is so varied And so much of it does depend on the social interactions we all have. And let me just ask my colleagues, were there any more questions that you can tell for us up here on the panel before we move on to closing out?
We have a question from Michele, or from Deborah for Michele. She works in Washington State. Are there particular groups that you would suggest to adults who have a TBI in the greater Seattle area? Is the Walk, Run, and Roll with Here and Now project? Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. The Walk, Run, and Roll is a one-time event that Brain Injury Alliance of Washington puts on. They're one of several organizations in our state that help people with brain injuries. Anybody who wants more information about any support groups are where it is at. Whether you're new in recovery or you are old in recovery, to find out you are not alone and everybody drops their fork over lunch. It's a wonderful blessing. I put TBI Groups 2019 Gmail in the chat box down there. We would be more than happy to keep you abreast. We list out all the different people's support groups. We are not a 501c3. Joel and I are volunteers. We do not take money. We just do this because it's saved our lives. It's made us better people. And there's a lot of people out there that need help. So, so many opportunities available that are doing. We're meeting weekly at Angle Lake Park in SeaTac. We have, 12 to 15 people that come and have lunch and get outside and swim and enjoy the outdoors. So there's a gobs of stuff going on. I'd love to tell everybody about all the opportunity available in the Seattle area. There's meetings all over, starting in person and online. So hit us up. We'll tell you everything we know, and everything Joel and I do is free. We know we ain't got $5. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question from the audience. If any of my colleagues up here would like to look through and find one.
Yeah, okay. This one's from Eileen. There are so many SOs that are family or within the disability community. Do you have any key messages for employers, medical professionals, educators, or policymakers to help educate them on the importance of SOs to living and succeeding with TBI?
The hardest thing I found, I took 2 jobs from employers I should not have. Most days I'm like this. I form a really good sentence and I can walk a straight line, but on other days I look completely inebriated. I stumble over all of my words and I drag a leg. It's amazing. And everybody wants to know how to treat me. That's what they didn't understand. That's the #1 question. And I come with my TBI. I'm disfigured. My face, it's dented. My skull, my neck. You can see something bad's happened to this woman. So I come right with it. But then the question they want to know is, how do I treat you? And I ask them just to please treat me like a human. If I have any questions, I let them know. I'll ask them, and I may ask the same one a dozen times. Please don't be frustrated with you and I'll try not to be frustrated with you. But when work came, I could do it, but it set me back light years to do it, because I felt I had to show everybody what I could do. I had to prove to everybody that even though I had a TBI, I was totally functional, when I certainly was 4 out of 5 days a week, and the other day a week about killed me. So let them know that you're human first, that's what you are first. That you can take, you want to understand how to do it right. You can take the criticism just like anybody else. Don't, pussyfoot around you and let you think that you're doing it okay when everybody's laughing at you. That's the worst. Just treat us like we're human. That's my best advice.
Mateo or Calvin, do you want to add anything before we close out?
Can you repeat the question?
Joel, I haven't looked at it, so can you repeat the question for him so that we can respond?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Hang on. Okay. Do you have any key messages for employers, medical professionals, educators, or policymakers to help educate them on the importance of SOs to living and succeeding with TBI?
Okay, I would say that as a person with a traumatic brain injury, that when it comes to just daily living, again, communication, sometimes, it's nice to, I think it's nice, and for anybody to just, say, okay, how are you doing? What is there anything that you need to help? Because, sometimes, as a person with a traumatic brain injury, sometimes, we don't even know, um, sometimes I know with me, there's times where, I can, for most of the amount of time, I can, form a sentence, but, every once in a while, I might not be able to, get my words out, you know, but that happens so sporadically, and that there isn't a given time when that happens, that happens, that, to watch out for. So it's more of, I think meeting us where we're at, as well as trying to find out where we're at. On If we're talking about policy making, I would say, there is, um, there is a, just figuring out uh, different uh, uh, when it comes to people with disabilities, um, uh, with traumatic brain injuries, that they are not, again, they're not they're not unified. I mean, they are in some sense of the word, but the disability is not unified. So, just again, meeting people where they are at would be my best answer.
Thanks very much, Mateo. I'm afraid we're out of time. This has been a really great discussion. Everyone in the audience, thank you for attending. Please consider coming next week at the same time at 1 o'clock for 60 minutes. All the panelists will be back, and we'll have a little more directly guided activity about some of the practical solutions that we found for survivors in dealing with TBI sociality. Thanks very much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all the panelists. It was a wonderful discussion. I really hope that we will continue making significant changes for survivors in the world through focusing on these more non-medical things that are definitely a big part of our lives with TBI. Thanks, everyone. And I will hope to see you next weekend, or sorry, next week, next Friday at 1 p.m. I believe you can use the same Zoom link for this technical assistance office hours. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Austin. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Take care.